Hello, it's July 12th, 2025, a Saturday. It's very early in the morning, about 6:15. And we're going to spend 15 minutes together. If you want to keep watching, which is up to you. I'm not going to talk about books this week because I need to talk about Superman, which I saw yesterday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Michael and I went to Grauman's Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard. That's where we saw F1. And we saw Superman with a couple of friends. Okay, here's my confession. I have never seen a superhero movie. I know. I mean, that can't possibly be true, can it? Me, the moviegoer. I haven't seen any Marvel Comics or DC Comics movies. Maybe animated. I don't know. I feel like, anyway, it seems like such a bold statement. It can't be true. Maybe it isn't true. I never saw the Christopher Reeve Superman, for example. I understand the broadest outline of the Superman story. That he came from another planet. He was raised by farmers in Kansas, and he does good. Okay, so I went and saw the movie. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And I think it's because of my Bible Studies Academy classes that I'm able to enjoy it. Why would that be? Well, let me tell you. A few months ago, I decided to pay some amount of money for this Bible Academy classes put on or supervised by, organized by Bart Ehrman, who is a biblical scholar who I just love. I think, all of his books. And he's a true biblical scholar. He teaches in North Carolina. He was an evangelistic believer for a lot of his life. And then once he became a Bible scholar, he became more skeptical. And then eventually he became an atheist. I actually was following him when he was a believer and bought his books when he was a believer. I just love Bible scholarship. I find it fascinating. Anyway, now he has this online thing where you can watch all of his lectures plus take classes from other professors at different academic institutions, and you pay a fee for the year and you can watch all these classes. So I was trying to do one a day while I was in New York, and I didn't quite do it. And now I do about 2 a week. Anyway, I'm in the middle of one called Demons and Ghosts in the Bible. Now, I've never really been that into demons and ghosts. I don't care about them. I feel like I can see through the psychology of them. What do I mean by that? I mean that people in extremis, in really painful situations, tend to invent fantastical, magical stories that give them some sense of control over their life, which includes superheroes. And it kind of feeds into this great man theory of history, which I think is mostly bullshit, but the idea is that great men come along and push our society forward. I think it's not that simple. Okay, that's just an aside. Okay, I'm taking this ghosts and demons class, and it is blowing my mind. I'm learning so much. And people, I've read the Bible a few times, but the Bible, you could easily spend your lifetime reading the Bible. When people would talk about other people reading the Bible all the time, I totally get it. You could spend a lifetime reading it and trying to understand it. Not because it's so great. Really, it's because it's so friggin' convoluted. So as we know, the Bible is a whole bunch of different books written by different people over time and all chosen at a certain moment, the Old Testament and the New Testament at some period of time in the 100s or 200s, the books that were included in both those books. I thought the Old Testament was so much older, but it does come from an older time. But when it was assembled and when the canon was decided on, was around the same time for Christians and Jews. Anyway, what I learned is that some books weren't included. Of course, we know that from the Gnostic Gospels. There's all kinds of other Gospels that weren't included in the Bible, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, all these Gospels that have since been found and were rejected as part of the canon. Well, the same is true for the Old Testament, and one of the books that was not included in the Old Testament is this Book of Jubilees, or the Book of the Watchers, or mostly it's kind of referred to as Enoch, the Book of Enoch. Okay, what's interesting about the Book of Enoch is it has a lot of stories in it that are referred to later in the Bible, as if that book is in the Bible, but it isn't. Although there are some exceptions, like the Ethiopian Jewish Church does include the Book of Enoch. And also I think the Eritrean Christian Church includes the Book of Enoch. But Catholicism and Christianity in general and Judaism does not include the Book of Enoch. But once you start reading the Book of Enoch, you realize it's just everywhere. It explains a million things, and it would take way too long to explain everything. But I will talk about one thing. In the actual Bible, in Genesis 6, there's a story where God talks about the other gods. And by the way, God talks about other gods all the time in the Bible. Okay, so it's not what you think. Okay, and God talks about these other gods or fallen angels who were tempted by the beauty of women, human women, and mated with them, and they created a race that was half human and half God called the Nephilim. And you can read about this in Genesis. But in the Book of Enoch, it explains that God became angry at this new race of people that were half God, half human, and he wanted to wipe them out, and that's why he sent the flood. So the reason that Noah gets in the ark and the world is flooded in the Bible is mostly because God's trying to kill off this race of half human, half God people, the Nephilim. And he doesn't succeed. He kills their bodies, but their spirits are still going around. And they're trying to find bodies, and they're interfering and screwing things up, and they're evil forces. Okay, so all of that is in the Bible, and I didn't know about this Book of Enoch, and it is so fascinating to me, and it's made me think a lot about this idea of a race of people who are half God and half man, like Jesus. So we know Yahweh also is a God who found a woman very attractive, the Virgin Mary, impregnated her, and created a baby, Jesus, who is half God, half man. Okay, so that has been so mind-blowing and interesting to me to learn about all these references to this special race of people that are half God, half man, and how ancient that is in human psychology, and how much we've used this as humans to explain ourselves to ourselves, and to feel like we have some control over ourselves, and sort of explain why there's evil in the world, because these fallen angels are swimming around out in the universe. So while I was watching Superman, which I really enjoyed, as long as I get caught up in like, what can Superman do? Wait, how come the bullets can kill him, but this can't? And the logic of it, I think you have to let go of, as in the Bible. You've got to let go of logic. Okay, you just got to say, this is raw id. This is raw psyche that you're looking at. Okay, so many things in Superman, like Superman keeps saving people at the last minute, a woman in a car, buildings are toppling, but I guess we're supposed to believe that no one's dying in those buildings. And he's saving everyone. I don't know. But once you give over to it, it's really fun. And I was finally, maybe at age 65, able to just let go of the rational part of it, wondering why this was true and that was true, or not understanding what people's powers are. And there's other superheroes in the movie, and I don't know their backstories, and I don't know how they became the Green Lantern or whatever. I don't know any of that stuff, but I really enjoyed it. But I enjoyed it even more because I was thinking how old this is, because it's way older than the Bible. Ancient Chinese, Indian, all these belief systems have the idea of kind of the half God, half man, who either comes to do good or to do evil. And it's really old in human psyche. So anyway, isn't that interesting? Your Bible study for the day, your Bible story for the day and study. I'm just trying to think of a couple more interesting things I've learned. from this class. Oh, here's one thing. So I always wondered why in the Bible, in 1 Corinthians, in the New Testament, Paul writes about how men should have short hair and women, her long hair is her glory and is her covering. When Jesus had long hair, that seems like a weird thing. And I remember in 1971 or 1972 in Spokane, my parents were picking me up from the Crescent department store downtown, and I was waiting in this vestibule, and there were Jesus freaks around and hippies, and they had long hair, and they were asking for money, and they were preaching, and it was like a mishmash of that whole time. Had finally gotten to Spokane in 1971 or 72, and I was waiting for my parents to pick me up. And this old man was sitting next to me with a cane, and he said, even in the Bible, Paul says that men should have short hair and only women should have long hair. And I turned to him and said, oh yeah, because I did remember that from 1 Corinthians, but Jesus had long hair. And then he kind of gave me a look, and we thought about that for a second. That's all I remember. I just remember this interaction. Okay, so I've always thought that. Well, I learned from this Bible study class that the earliest depictions of Jesus have him in short hair. It was the common fashion of the time for men to have short hair in Jerusalem at that time. But he became depicted as someone with long hair because the Greek gods always had long hair, and because Alexander the Great had long hair. So then Jesus, if he was a god, he had to have a mane of hair, and that's how he got long hair. So when Paul was writing, he wasn't thinking of Jesus with long hair. And, there's another thing on that. Alexander the Great. So we don't know when Jesus died. It doesn't say in any, the Bible or anywhere else how old Jesus was when he died. But we do know that Alexander the Great died when he was 32 or 33. And so that was just adopted for Jesus. And Alexander the Great came about 300 years before Jesus. And also I've been reading about the great man theory of history, and which I reject. I think I'm an incrementalist personally. I actually think we should have days celebrating diplomats, the slow, painstaking work that people do to make deals or understandings with other countries that help us avoid war. And it isn't just one person. That's my personal feeling. But I've also been reading about how when people or societies are in a lot of stress, they have more supernatural ideas. They tend towards more supernatural religious ideas. The classic example is the Native Americans when they were being extincted by the European colonizers in America. They started gravitating to more and more fantastical types of religion, like the ghost dances that they would do, like really reaching for supernatural stories. And it seems to be something that humans do, come up with supernatural explanations for things when they're in personal crisis and they're trying to have some control over. They need an explanation and they have to have some control. So they come up with more and more fantastical ideas depending on how much stress they're in. So that's interesting and leads me to my next thing. So today I'm flying to Spokane for my friend Maggie Randall. She used to be Maggie Walsh when I met her, funeral. So I've had two longtime close friends die in the last few months, Jill Sobule and Maggie Randall, who died last week, and her funeral is on Tuesday in Spokane. So I'm going up for a few days, and so I've been really thinking about them, how much I love them, how sad I am that I don't get to enjoy them for what is now considered to be a normal lifespan to like say 80. So like to me, they're not getting 20 to 25 years of life that they could be enjoying the goods of life, but they're not getting that because they have died. And yet they're of a certain age. Both were 66 when they died. So they had realized, both of them were self-actualized people. Maggie had 3 children and devoted herself to being a mother and family life. and Jill was a musician who made her name and created incredible music. They kind of they had completed the task. So it's a different kind of thing than when someone dies young before they're able to do that. And so I've had a lot of sad moments and a lot of sleepless nights thinking about their death, and then of course about myself. And because Jill's death was so unexpected, it just reminds you that any day could be the day. And it makes me think about what I've done in my life, which I'm satisfied with, and what I'm doing with the rest of my life. I've been also reading, our 15 minutes is here, people. I have to wrap it up. I've been reading a lot of Carl Jung. Carl Jung, who is a complicated guy who I don't agree with a lot of Carl Jung's ideas, but I mostly do agree with his ideas. I would say 80% of the things that he wrote that I've read, I think is fantastic. But he actually writes a lot about what it's like to be older in my time of life, looking at your final 20 or 25 years with hope that you'll get. And what an important time that is in Carl Jung's idea, where you kind of metabolize and think through your upbringing. You confront your shadow side or your dark side of yourself. You rid yourself of all of the stuff that's been put on you to act certain ways or be certain ways or produce in certain ways. And your true authentic self, is his idea, is able to come out in this period of time, like over 60 to 80. And I feel that's true. I hope that's true for me. And it's really a beautiful thought. So I'm just leaving you with that, people. I'm going up to Spokane, where I will be participating in the Catholic funeral for my friend Maggie and being with my old friends from Spokane who mean so much to me. And I'll be back in LA next Saturday for my Saturday Substack summary. So I hope you have a good week. Bye.